an outstanding result, a result of immense planning and high level of professionality. We had special forces from the Yamam police unit combined with the Israel Security Agency, the Shin Bet, operational capabilities, all under the umbrella of the IDF, that went into a residential area in Rafah, conducted a rescue operation, and indeed, in the early hours of this morning, we announced that we'd retrieved and rescued Louis Har, who is 70 years old, and Fernando Marman, who is 61 years old. The reports that we've received, the initial surveillance of their health situation was relatively good. We evacuated them by helicopter to hospital, to the Tel HaShomer Sheba Hospital, just outside of Tel Aviv, and they're undergoing a further examination. But it's looking promising this morning. I think it's a good news, a good way to start the day after 4 months of war and lots of heartbreak. But we need to remember that there are still 134 Israelis being held captive by Hamas. Their circumstances, their condition, unknown, unsure. And we need to bring every one of them home, every last one of them. Well, of course, we've said since the outset of this war that we will operate wherever Hamas is. And what we've seen time and time again is that Hamas has no regard for civilian life. Just this operation, just this morning, took place in a residential area, in a home, in a building, on the second story of the building. As our forces conducted their operation, they were fired at from all directions, came under heavy fire. And this is just exemplifies precisely the dilemma we are operating in. Of course, we've been instructed to create and devise a plan to operate by the government. We are conducting that. And we will, for sure, operate under the instruction of the government, under the understanding that this is not a quick fix war. There is a long war ahead of us. To dismantle a terrorist organization that has embedded itself in the last 16 years in the Gaza Strip, under the Gaza Strip, taking advantage of UN facilities, taking advantage of hospitals, it's going to take some time. We will continue to operate under the understanding that there are civilians in the area. We need to minimize the impact, operate in accordance to the laws of armed conflict, but at the end of the day, achieve our goals of bringing home the hostages, every last one of them, and making sure that Hamas, who can't be trusted with power, never has the power of governing the Gaza Strip again. I'm not aware of any announcement or call on the people of Rafah to evacuate Rafah this morning. If that changes, then of course it will be apparent and clear to everyone. We need to operate wherever Hamas is hiding. We need to operate wherever Hamas is holding hostages. We've proven time and time again that Hamas has no regard for human life. And this is precisely the reason we are at war, because they came in on the 7th of October. They abducted, butchered, massacred over 1,200 Israelis and abducted 240 other people. The suggestion that we don't operate where Hamas is like saying, give up on these people. We are operating to create the conditions to bring home the hostages and to make sure Hamas does not have that power. Those conditions could be created through diplomacy, or as we've proven this morning, through operational capabilities based on intelligence to bring them home. We need to bring home the hostages. That is the moral, that is the right thing to do for the people of Israel, the Israelis that are being held hostage. That is our obligation, and that needs to be done. That is just where we are at this stage of the war. We've said that Hamas cannot be given a free hand precisely because they can't be trusted. So why should we trust them with Rafah? Why should we trust them anywhere? They need to be sought out. They need to be eradicated. They need to be crushed. And the Israelis, the hostages, need to be brought home. We could end this war tomorrow if Hamas unconditionally surrendered and released the hostages. There would be no need for a war. So those questioning or criticizing Israel for operating need to really ask themselves what they would do in a similar situation where they had hundreds of their citizens being held hostage, and how they would conduct themselves, and what restrictions they would put on themselves. We are operating within the laws of armed conflict. We're operating based on the goals of this war to make sure that the security situation is improved, to make sure that the hostages are brought home, and to make sure that Hamas never have the power of government again. We have dismantled and destroyed 18 of Hamas's battalions. There are probably around 4 remaining in different locations in the Gaza Strip. I think that we've depleted their capability to operate in most of the areas around the Gaza Strip in an organized manner and in a military-style manner. Of course, as we are dismantling and destroying and engaging and killing the terrorists on the battleground, then we are finding that they are less motivated to engage us. They are conducting a more guerrilla warfare type attack of sneaking up from behind like cowards and attacking our forces. Of course, that requires that we need to be very, very alert in order to preempt those attacks. That is what we're doing. And I would say in almost all of the occasions, we are coming out with the upper hand. They are being defeated on the battleground. And as we move forward, we will continue to do so. I want to be very, very cautious in revealing anything. But of course, we understand that Sinwar and Hamas leadership are still hiding like cowards beneath ground, still hiding like cowards behind the people of Gaza. They are still willing to sacrifice all of the Gaza Strip to maintain their power. Our goal is to make sure that they don't have that power. They need to pay for the injustice, for the devastation, for the death that they have caused. We are determined to hold them accountable for their brutal actions of the 7th of October and the results of their poor decision and their failed decision against the people of Israel, the attack that they committed. The Houthis continue to try and conduct various activities. There's a very strong naval presence, international naval presence. Of course, the international coalition that is striking against the Houthis in order to try and safeguard with some success the naval routes for merchant ships, which is a good outcome. So we are maintaining our defensive posture, I would say, with regard to the Houthis. On the border with Lebanon, we've seen increased tensions. We have seen more and more activity by Hezbollah against our forces and civilians on the northern border. We still have 100,000 people or so living outside of their homes, away from the border area, which is, of course, concerning and an extreme challenge now for 4 months. Imagine being evacuated from your home for 4 months to keep you safe. We are maintaining, I would say, in principle, defensive posture, also on the border with Lebanon, but preempting strikes as Hezbollah are trying to conduct them as well. It's very, very fragile. It's very concerning. It's a reality we can't accept, and Hezbollah need to abide by United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 and evacuate southern Lebanon and move north. From our perspective, we need to be prepared for any eventuality. We are creating the operational plans for that arena if it does deteriorate further. So, of course, it should be shocking to the entire world, although not surprising. We understand that Hamas have no regard for international symbols like the United Nations. We understand that Hamas have created this huge amount of power over everybody and anybody that wants to operate in the Gaza Strip, even if they want to do good things like the international humanitarian organizations, they can't operate freely. So when Hamas strategically chose to position its data center, which was a core component of their intelligence capabilities, beneath the United Nations headquarters, the UNRWA headquarters, they were doing it intentionally because they wanted to make sure that we do not strike there, because they know we do not target the UN. That is what Hamas tried to achieve. We found an 800-meter tunnel system, very elaborate, going from a UN school to the UN headquarters. We found the data center. It was very, very elaborate, also very developed. I would say, not something extraordinary in comparison to its width and depth, but the components that Hamas had placed there. And the reason they had specifically placed them there appears to be strategic in its essence in order to try and impede and prevent us from operating against it. We know that what we found there is very revealing, both for our military operations, but also very concerning to what extent UNRWA has gone in order to prevent being manipulated, subordinated to Hamas, a terrorist organization. I think when somebody is leeching off your electricity or your water, when things are moving beneath your feet, it's very hard to believe that there was no knowledge whatsoever. In 2014, there was a report that the ground beneath the UN headquarters had sunk because of what appears to be tunnels. So I think there needs to be a lot of soul searching, but more importantly, a lot of people need to be held accountable for hiding, perhaps turning a blind eye, or being complicit with Hamas's intentions. This is a reality that has developed and evolved over the years, and this is what we're seeing in this development, or this latest development of the reality of how Hamas will abuse humanitarian organizations, international organizations, and international symbols.